And Rhonda.
Hello, hello, hello. Is everyone taking a seat, please? Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our business meeting, our annual business meeting this morning. Unfortunately, Sandy Bogardus cannot make it here this morning, so we have to nominate someone to take her place as chair for the meeting. Sharon.
I nominate Lynn Lemp to chair our meeting this morning.
Okay. It's been seconded. Are there any other nominations? Then Lynn, I nominate you as chair. Okay. Shall we say a prayer to get started? Loving God, as we turn to the business of this day, give us wisdom in our speaking, attentiveness in our learning, and sound judgment in our decision-making. Keep us thankful for your presence and for all our life together. Amen. And I turn the meeting over to you, Lynn.
A big thank you to Rhonda, who's here this morning as our representative minister. We have to have a minister present to conduct our annual general meetings. And today is our first part, being our budget meeting. We do need a secretary to record the minutes, and so I am nominating Mary Jo McQuaid. Is there anyone else here that would like to take her place? Margaret has seconded the motion. I know you got to have some humor, right? So I thank you all for staying this morning. I thank you all for being tenuous enough to get here in the weather that we're having. It's absolutely beautiful out there. However, the roads are a little slippery. And Mike, we would love to thank you for all your hard work putting the budget together again this year. And he's going to present what each committee has given to him as their requests for the year, as to the money that we're going to spend on different things around the property and throughout our church community and on the things that we do in the wider community. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mike, and Mike is going to present our annual budget for the year of 2024. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one thing I did forget. I need somebody to make a motion so that all the adherents can vote along with the members this morning. Is there somebody that would make that motion? Tom Cockrell, and a seconder. Would that be good, Don? Don Sawatsky? Thank you.
I have to say, it feels a little funny wearing winter snow boots up here. I asked Margie in the kitchen this morning, am I completely underdressed for this? But it's appropriate for the weather. So we've already had lots of acknowledgements this morning, but I want to start that way again as well. Just acknowledging sort of all the people who contribute to the financial workings behind the scenes, but also in terms of making our life possible here. And so first of all, I just want to acknowledge David Geen and Lynn Lemp, who are co-chairs of the Finance Committee. Also on the committee is Margaret Kyle as a de facto member because she's the envelope secretary, and May Husk as our treasurer, and myself. And I want to give special thanks to May. She's the real workhorse. in terms of keeping track of our finances. I actually don't know how many hours she puts in, but I have to tell you they're significant on a weekly and a monthly basis, just recording every financial transaction that happens through here, balancing monthly bank statements, working with Margaret to make sure that Margaret tracks donations, but making sure that the numbers May receives and the numbers Margaret receives, match. I know this year, I'm not sure what software program she was using in previous years, but in the last couple months, she's been transitioning over to Excel and just making that, and as any of you know, making a software change. So we've had lots of phone calls and emails back and forth. How do I do this? How do I do that? She puts in hours and hours and hours. So you're not here, May, but thank you. Then I just want to acknowledge everyone else. We're a very generous congregation, and in particular, we're generous with our time and our talents. You think about the thrift shop, all the hours and hours of work. It's all volunteer labor over there. That is a huge contribution and a huge gift to this congregation. We have the property team, which two significant members of that team are both absent from us, Gord Rutherford and Bill Pullen. And Dave is here this morning, and I think Don Lemp has stepped in. But again, it's a real commitment of time and effort that goes there. Our music team, whether it's Elaine practicing piano or Karen, our recorder, our leader of our recorder ensemble, Toot Sweet, yes. I think we have a pretty good music program here. And again, the worship committee, planning, volunteer. We don't have a full-time minister, so, people like Adam who step up and, lead our worship services. But for the worship team itself, who actually plans, finds people, who plan the services, who choose music, all that stuff, it takes time, real time. So, we're very generous that way. And we are generous financially. I mean, we're not a big group of people, but financially, we're doing okay. And I think we have generous hearts, and when money is needed, people come forward. And that's always been true of us, and it's a great thing. So, enough of that. I know you want to go home. So as you know, the last few years, our budgets have been kind of good news, bad news stories. Bad news in the sense that for a couple years, we've been having deficit budgets. Good news in the sense that by the time the year end actually rolled around, we did better than we thought we were going to do. Even if we still had a deficit at the end of the year, we did significantly better than what was projected. This year, 2023, and looking forward to 2024, it's kind of all good news, at least on a financial level. I do have notes here, but I'm not really following them, so if I get lost, forgive me here. So 2023, you've seen the financial reports. We ended with a surplus of $41,000. We had budgeted for a deficit of $37,000. So we actually did about $78,000 better than budget. Of course, there were two main reasons for that. Unfortunately, this would be the not so good news of the good news story, is that one of the biggest contributing factors was that we lost our full-time salaried minister. It's sad that Yeah, it puts us in an awkward position, you know. We love to have the minister, and it looks good on the books, but it's not so good for us as a community, I think. The other big contributor to the really great bottom line was the thrift shop, which had an amazing year, $132,000 approximately in sales, which was, by the way, the most they've ever made in the history of the thrift shop. And it was about $37,000, a little more than $37,000 more than what we had budgeted for them to bring in. And it was $33,000 more than they brought in 2022. So that's a huge increase in 1 year. And, you know, there might be a lot of reasons for that, but one of them surely is the fact that, I mean, all the hard work and dedication and the fact that we have such great women working over there and men, but also we're now the only thrift shop in town. And the economy is hard. It's hard times, and people, I think, are relying more and more on the thrift shop. Local donations in 2023 were down very slightly by about $1,000 compared to 2022, so not a lot of change there. So turning to the budget for 2024, I'll just give a quick recap on how this comes about. We usually start in the fall by asking each of the teams to go through their budget lines and looking at, they have a sheet that looks very much like what's up on the screen, except that the budget column is blank. So they look at the 2020, so for 2024, they would have been looking at a sheet that had the 2023 budget number and their actuals next to it. And depending on when they did this, they would have been looking at the actuals to the end of October, November, or December, depending on what month they had their team meeting. At some point, that year-to-date is actually updated to December 31st. But basically, each team sits down, looks at the money they've spent in the previous year, and projects, thinking about what they want to do in the coming year, how much they're going to need. And often the numbers between the 2 years are pretty close. So that's kind of round one. Round two is I kind of look at all the holes, and usually those holes mostly show up in the receipts side of things. And I just kind of make a projection again based on the previous year. Once I've done that, once I have sort of a complete draft budget, then it goes to council, and council sits down with it, and we go through and say, okay, what needs to change here, or does anything need to change here? And so we talk about whatever issues come up. So I'm hoping that everybody has had a chance to look at the budget. I'm not going to go into really any kind of detail. I'll leave that. If you have specific questions, I'll do my best to answer them or fund the people who can. But we are projecting a $51,827 surplus, approximately, which is, again, really great news. Historically, that hasn't happened very often. Somewhere here I guess we don't have the booklets yet, but as part of your booklets that will be coming in the coming weeks, I did another 10-year spreadsheet where you could see the amounts over the past 10 years. And yeah, that one. I don't know if you can actually read it way up there. The numbers are pretty small. But in 2014, we had a $50,000 surplus. And there was one other year, 2019, we had a $49,000 surplus. A lot of other years, 5 of the past 10 years, we've had deficits. So the fact that we had a $41,000 surplus this year, and we're projecting a $51,000 surplus next year, means we're doing okay. We're doing more than okay. But again, this is the cautionary. This is the reality check here. There are two main reasons for that, and they're the same two reasons we had such a good year last year. Is we don't have a full-time salaried minister. We have a $51,000 surplus. I think back to if we had a full-time salaried minister, we'd be looking at $60,000 to $70,000 or more in salary. So that would pretty much wipe out that surplus. The good news going forward is our mortgages will be paid off. We have 3 mortgages, and they're all scheduled to be paid off around January of next year. And that's a savings of about $30,000 a year in mortgage and interest payments. So now if you added $30,000 to that $50,000 surplus, you'd have an $80,000 surplus, and then, you know, covering the cost of a full-time minister wouldn't be a problem at all. And that has been the challenge the last few years when we've been struggling as a smaller congregation with a full-time minister. And I know that's something that really weighed on Joan Kessler's mind. We had several conversations where she's, you know, private conversations where she just said, you know, can the congregation really afford me? And I think we all would have said yes. We'll make it work. But it's an issue, and it's an issue for anybody coming who might want to come here. Can they afford? Will I make a move to a smaller congregation? Can they afford to have me? Because ministers, like everybody else, need to think about their own financial well-being. So once we get, what I'm saying is, if we can kind of maintain our revenue levels and have the mortgage paid off at the end of next year, I think that almost erases that question, because then we know we have money to afford a full-time minister. This budget, the other thing to say though, in regards to this budget, it does not include an amount for the minister. So that may be obvious too. It does include a $13,000 amount for pulpit supply, which is way more than is ever in the budget for pulpit supply. But that's the difference, basically. You know, a full year of pulpit supply costs us about $13,000. A full year of a salaried minister costs us between $60,000 and $70,000. So that's savings there. The other change we made when the budget was originally taken to council, we put the thrift shop put in an estimate of $100,000 in sales, and I feel we talked about this, and I know there are feelings on both sides on this, and we increased the amount to $125,000. And there's rationales. You could argue this both ways as to why we should or should not have done that. There's some thought that putting a higher number puts more pressure on staff to perform. I'm sorry if it feels that way, because that's not the intent. It's not the intent of council, for sure. We know all the volunteers are working as hard as they possibly can. It's a great place. And the idea is not to put stress on people. But what we're trying to do is create an accurate picture of what we think the projections, of what we think we'll actually achieve. Historically, we've budgeted fairly conservatively, thinking, okay, if we budget low and our sales are a lot higher, you know, then we have a happy ending. We always have a happy ending, right? But then we go through the stress, though, at the beginning of every year of passing a $30,000 or a $40,000 deficit budget. So there's stress. there's stress by under budgeting too, by under projecting. So what we're trying for here is a realistic financial picture. So instead of the $100,000 the thrift shop originally projected, we upped it to 125, which is still $7,000 less than they actually did. They actually performed last year. So it's not like we're asking for the moon. It's still less than what the thrift shop actually performed. But it gives us a little more accurate picture that we can use to say, okay, what resources are we likely to have to work with? And I don't actually have a lot to say because I don't think you want me to go through this line by line, and I'm not sure that I could. But I'm quite happy to answer any questions you might have. Sure.
Thank you. I'm looking after the Memorial Committee and Fund, and the amount that I have sent receipts out for 2023 is $2,200. It shows $700 in the budget. So I do have to talk to May about it. She's had a lot on her plate in the last little while, so I hadn't rushed to talk to her. But I do need to find out where that money went. I don't handle the money. I just do the receipting. So that is one thing that I'm concerned about.
So basically, you're concerned about the difference between the actuals reported,
The actuals for 223 don't reflect what was received.
what you received. Okay.
Yeah. And so I just send the receipts out, but I have those receipts, so
Right.
I just want
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would question in this budget is the lack of amount for a minister. Being on the search committee, I am very concerned. I mean, I'm hoping that we will have a minister by summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at a minimum, we should have at least a half a year in there at a minimum. We don't know for sure, but I mean, a budget is your best guess. And our hope is that we will have a minister by summer. So that is something I would question.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I noticed is missing here, there isn't any line in here. It's not a balance sheet, but we do need to know, like, there is the legacy fund, which has a balance of over 50,000 in it, and that should, I think, be recorded somewhere. And of course, the memorial fund, and I don't know what the up-to-date amount is on that.
Yes,
those
I
two
do have
things
those.
we need to know that as a congregation.
I do have those numbers.
Perfect. Thanks.
So let me see if I can take that in order. Yeah. So the discussion about whether or not to put in an amount for a minister. I think at council we did talk about that. And that's why we increased the pulpit supply up to 13,000, which is what we expected our pulpit supply expenses would be for the year. My understanding is that we've had no applications yet. A potential minister would have to give 2 to 3 months notice. Once you find someone, they would have to give their congregation 2 to 3 months notice. I think you're right. It is possible. My own sense is, I think we'd be lucky to get someone here before September. In which case, you're looking at maybe 4 months. We could put that amount in, but we certainly, the $51,000 is not a question about whether or not we could afford to pay them, because with that $51,000 surplus, that we'll have the money to do that. So it was a call on the part of council. If you want to make a motion, which you're very welcome to do, Penny, to make a motion to put an amount in. Well, is it related to this issue? Okay, great.
I was about to stand up and say the same thing, that it needs to include at least a partial year of ministry salary, and along with that also telephone for the new minister, book allowance. Joan wouldn't have spent hers just out of the goodness of her heart, that she knew she was leaving, so she wouldn't have spent any of the book allowance, and you're required, I think, from the United Church Manual to provide the
Yes.
book allowance. And also there will be mileage expenses that go along with the minister. So, and I'm not sure about the professional development, that I think is also required by the manual too. So I think that those are missing, and I don't think it's okay, unless you don't want to hire a minister, to leave those out of the budget. So I would like to see the budget amended.
Okay. Rhonda, I think Rhonda was going to say something. Sorry.
Okay.
As a minister, if you were going to hire someone, say, within the next 2 months, it will take them 3 months to leave their congregation. Within that time, they also probably have a month of holiday time coming from the congregation they're leaving, so you're looking at 4 months. We're already into February, and I think, Mike, you're right. Even if they called someone in the next couple months, they won't start till September.
I think from council's perspective, the issue is not what's in the budget, because the budget is a guesstimate in any event. A budget is never a hard and fast thing. It's our best guesstimate of what you think. A budget is a projection of something that hasn't happened yet. So in each and every case, anytime you create a budget, you're working on an assumption. It's not. Nothing is hard and fast with any of these numbers. I think the issue for council was, if we find someone, even in June, will we have money to pay for them? And the answer is yes, we will. Because even a half year's salary is only going to be $30,000. And we're running a $51,000 surplus at the moment. So it's whether the money is there or not isn't an issue in terms of the actual resources we have to pay someone. It's whether or not it comes here. And we can do that. We can put in a number. I would need some help with that, and I don't know that I could do that standing here unless we just pull a number out of the air. But for things like, you're right, that things like book allowance and travel allowances, they're mandated, and it's and I don't know what those mandated numbers are, so I can't just scratch them in standing here. But we can, if we want, put something in. I don't object to that. Sorry, Don.
Yeah, speaking from the perspective of the search committee, we have not had applicants. We've had some interest. And I think one of the factors in not having applicants is the increase in living expenses in Lake Country. You know, that the housing expenses have gone way up. And I think the maximum salary would be about $70,000 if we follow the schedule of the United Church. And whether somebody's starting out as a minister or somebody that doesn't have a base to work from a smaller community, for example, would have difficulty financially living in Lake Country. And I think that was certainly Joan's concern. One of her concerns was whether we could maintain somebody here, you know, in this milieu where living expenses are pretty high.
I think we covered all the issues. And I keep getting back to what Mike says, that we have the ability to pay a minister in the latter part of 24 if we are fortunate to have the appropriate application. And let's leave it there. Yes, all these extra things like book allowances and travel allowances are part of the United Church system. But as Micah says, we have that surplus that will allow us to consider at that point, Mike and the whole church will have to look at the actual expenses. And what we've just heard, I think, that probably the base salary that the United Church is mandating, because our expenses of living are so high here, as a congregation, as an employer, we may well have to give some extra funds there. But that's something we can look at. Let's leave this now. Let's wait till what happens and approve the budget as outlined by Mike.
I just wonder too, if a minister is called here, we have a congregational meeting to approve that, don't we?
But of
And at
course-
that point, we would be able to approve this update to the budget at that time. I just a question.
Rhonda would probably have a clearer sense of that, but my sense is that part of the call, yes, it would require a congregational meeting, and part of that would be salary would be part of that, motion. Yeah.
I would speak against the last comment that we don't need this in the budget. The budget is something that I believe is published. I know that just for the taxation exemption that we get, we send that to the District of Lake Country. It is public. And if we don't have anything in that column for a minister, I would ask what message that sends out. If somebody is asking for this information, if they're applying for a job, they may want to look at the budget, and if it's got nothing there and nothing in the columns that were mentioned earlier that go with having a minister, I think it sends a very negative message. So I'm prepared to move that we adjust the budget to include at a minimum 4 months minister salary, and the 4 months amount for the telephone, book allowance, and mileage expense for the minister and professional development. So I would move that.
Okay, and that's fine. So I'm just gonna I can't break it down because, like I was saying, Penny, I don't know what the book allowance is. So we have to, but we have to put a number there. You can't just make a motion and say we put that in there. So I'm gonna need a number here. So I'm gonna choose $60,000. Is that okay? Divided by 12 equals $5,000 a month times 4 equals $20,000. Does that seem?
4 months, so it's a third of whatever that is.
So that's assuming a $60,000 salary, right? Take $60,000 divided by 12 gives you a monthly figure times 4 gives you $20,000.
20.
$60,000 divided by 12 is 5,000.
You're talking about 60,000, not 70?
Well, do you want me? I can use.
I would use the 70.
Okay.
Because for sure, I think the issues that have been raised about the high cost of living here should be considered. So I would take the higher figure. A budget is kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
So that gives you a figure of 23,300. So if we say $25,000.
yeah, that sounds much better. And then the book allowance, we could probably look at a third of the telephone budget for last year, which was 600, which is pretty low. I don't know anybody that has a phone that cheap, but that was, you wouldn't have a cell phone that cheap anyways.
Well, they do. I mean, the office phone is separate from the minister's phone.
Yes, and there is that office phone, okay.
And there's a
So
budget
that would
line
be
for the
200.
office phone, so.
And then the book allowance, we don't have anything in there. Would you say 200? I don't know. I have no idea that.
I would argue that $25,000 is lots to put in there because this is highly speculative to begin with, and I think we should leave the book allowance and the telephone at this point out of it. Sincerely.
Yes, moving expenses, as several people have mentioned that, that probably should be considered.
Well, we have that as part of the search team.
Expense?
We have a search team expense of $3,000 that probably won't cover. Again, we had a long conversation about that at council. We did put in $3,000 worth of expenses for the search team.
Okay, that's great. Professional development is the only other thing. Oh, sorry, mileage and professional development, those two. I mean, it's
I
your
can't pass
call,
this without
but
actual numbers.
The motion
so-
is includes those things, that's all.
Okay, so the 25,000, let's be clear that the motion, so remake your motion, please. Yeah, sure.
I didn't put any numbers in here because I don't know what they are. Move that we add money for a minimum of 4 months minister salary, telephone, professional development, book allowance, and mileage. That we add money.
So let's say $25,000.
Okay, so that we add $25,000.
Is that right? Is that right, Penny? Is that your motion? Mhm.
Okay, I'm not speaking loud enough. If we don't include mileage and professional development, even telephone, what message are we sending?
Mhm.
And I think we should be sending a positive message out
Right.
there. People that want to look at these things, they have the right to look at them. If they're moving here, they want to be sure that this is a congregation that respects them and cares about those things and ensures that we're treating them fairly. They don't know that when they are reading, our information and our profile. They don't know those things, and they're going to look at what we have done in the past.
Right. Karen? No, of course not. Always time for Karen.
At the same time, we could reduce the pulpit supply by 4,000.
That's true.
If we're taking a third of the year and we're going to pay someone, then we can take a third of the year of pulpit supply away,
Right,
obviously.
right.
So 4,000 less, make it 9,000 instead of 13.
Okay. Okay, so that's, I think that we'll have to do that as a separate motion. Okay, so we're just gonna play a little fast and loose with our motion here. We're gonna add that, and let's reduce, because let's make it all one. Let's reduce the public supply by $4,000. Yeah. see how May or the council, I'm not a member of council. We need to be clear. So I don't attend these meetings. I mean, other than the one budget thing. So how they want to handle this in terms of where they put this, you know, I'll let them figure that out. I think our job is to come up with a number and then they can.
As a point of order, I've made a motion, it's been seconded, it's on the floor.
Has it been seconded?
Yes, Dawn.
Oh, sorry.
Dawn
Sorry, Dawn.
seconded it. And in that motion, it called for amounts to be put in those different categories. So, you know, that, the detail on that, I think that is valid for discussion. But if we're going to change and add, then I think it's appropriate to have an amendment to the motion and discuss that.
Okay. So give me the amounts you want for the bunk study. Give me those amounts, Penny.
Well, okay, so we talked about the telephone. I think that was agreed at $200, which is a third. The book allowance has nothing in it. I'm going to suggest $200. And the mileage, the actual mileage, well, the budget for 2023 was $675. I would suggest a third of that, which would be $225. And professional development was set at $1,800. A third of that would be $600. And we've discussed the moving expense already. That is in the search committee budget. It's not in the original motion.
I'm not sure of the point of order, but I would like to see an amendment to include the moving expenses because they're going to be considerable for someone moving here unless they're moving quite locally. So I think that needs to be in here for a minister when they're looking at this congregation to know that their moving expenses are going to be covered or at least partially covered for them to make this step.
That's what I was saying. That's at $3,000 under the search team.
That will be quite inadequate. I would like to see it probably move the amendment to $7,000 in the moving expenses.
Yeah, if we're following Penny's rules of order here, then we do that as a separate motion.
Amendment needs to be seconded. And I'll second it.
Okay.
Just to put it on the floor and then...
Can we add another amendment?
Well, first you have to deal with this amendment, I believe. You could do an amendment to amendment, yeah. That's pretty complicated. But, you know,
I don't want to deal with worship team $3,000 amount as well.
yeah, that, is that,
Yeah, okay.
they all have to be dealt with separately. To move that 3,000 that you're talking about has to be another amendment too.
Okay. Okay. So, we have a motion on the floor. Can you read that one more time first, please?
That we reduce,
Let's go back to
that we add money for a minimum of 4 months minister's salary, and for telephone, $200. Minister's salary was $25,000.
Yes.
For telephone, for $200. For professional development, $600. For book allowance, $200, and mileage, $225.
Yes. So all in favor? don't see any opposition. Thank you. So that adds up to $26,225. Okay, so then, Karen, do you want to make a motion?
I move that the budget be amended to show $9,000 for pulpit supplies rather than $13,000.
And we have a second opinion. David? Any questions, discussion? All in favor? And that's carried as well. So at this point, we're looking at an increase, sorry?
So the moving
Oh, yes,
expense
sorry.
wasn't included as an amendment, so I think it would have to be a new motion.
Okay.
So I move that the line created to cover the minister's moving expenses, and I would suggest $7,000 to at least get it onto the budget.
Can you second it? Okay. All in favor? Sorry? Question, sorry? Sure.
My question is that there was a line, I didn't have the line right in front of me, 3,000 something for the search committee,
Yes.
which you indicated was about moving expenses. So are we adding another 4,000 or another 7,000? Or 7,000 in total? Yeah, okay. Okay, so it's an extra 7,000.
Okay. Right. So, wait a second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any opposed? Thanks, David. You didn't know I'm opposed. None opposed, so that's carried. So that, total changes, with all those motions is $29,225. Which would, which one am I looking at there? Which would make our new number what did I say that was, 29,000? I do have a calculator, I'm just not sure where I wrote that down now. 225. So I have come up with a new surplus number of $22,602.94. $22,602.94. If anybody else has a calculator and wants to check that number.
So, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I wondered about the property team amount, and I noticed that Dave is here.
Yeah.
And he did a report that was an update on the things the things that are required to maintain the building. And I don't know if there's anything that urgent. I looked through and I couldn't see anything there, but I do know that next year our mortgage is going to be finished. Yay. But the other thing is that our roof is going to be 20 years old. And I'm just thinking that it may not be necessary this year, but I would like to see some plan for maintaining some of these things in the church. I know we've had a lot of problems with some animals, birds and things, and I'm just thinking ahead, and it's something that we need to be aware of. I don't know if Dave wants to comment.
Dave?
Yeah, hi. I wrote that report to the board. It was not widely distributed. It was initiated by Joan. She was quite concerned. I've worked with the property committee for the last few years informally. I spent a lot of time with the building. The reason that I didn't have everybody get a copy was I didn't want to create any anxiety. It was kind of a 5-year look ahead. So say this building is roughly 20 years old, so it makes sense that think of it as your house. You know, you get a 25-year roof, you get a 20-year-old furnace, etc. So it's, in my view, and I'm down here about 3 times a week, it's okay. But I'm not in the predicting game. So this is your house. I come from the point of view of maintain what you have. This is a really valuable building, well built and high quality, and it's doing okay. So have a little faith in the building. I think we'll be just fine. If there's something that does come up, I think the property committee, you know, like say for instance, if a furnace died, you know, I put in the report those are $8,000 or $10,000 to replace one. Just replace it. Pay for that furnace. Hope the other 3 or 4 keep going. They're not all going to die on the same day. So, you know, that's a routine expense. So I can live with it.
To partly to go back to one of your previous questions, Penny, one of the drawbacks of splitting the AGM into 2 meetings is that we have this budget meeting, but we don't have the reports in front of us. And so a lot of the information you're asking for in terms of how much money is in the accounts will be in the booklet when you get it. You don't have it in your hands right now. But I have numbers here. So as of the end of January, I mean, all the numbers are on that 10-year spreadsheet. But our total cash is that we have is $171,000, $186,000. So almost, you know, almost 170. Well, it's $171,000. Total operating cash, and a lot of that, some of that money is Memorial Fund money. So what I would call operating cash, which is the total of our general account, capital account, and reserve fund, as of December 31st was $107,384.25. So we had $100,000, $107,000 cash that we can access immediately. It's not tied up in a bond or a certificate, or it's not stashed away somewhere that we can't get to it. The capital fund itself, as of January 31st, was $8,861. The reserve, amount in the reserve fund was 28,737. I'm reading off the cents. And the general account was 74,118. So, again, if the furnace blew up tomorrow, we would have money to pay for it without getting into the memorial fund or any of the other, without the paying unit accounts. Are there any other? Sure.
I'm sorry, this is going to drag out a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go and show you on the screen because it's easier that way. I have a couple line items that need to be corrected because I'm picky. And you might appreciate it and you might not. So first off, under Do Not Communications, right here, this is a heading, right here, so there shouldn't be anything under it. So I don't know what this money has been used for. Maybe it should be a line for miscellaneous, but I don't know what that money was used for and what it's allocated for.
I can't change that because May wouldn't know that answer.
I know, but she didn't answer me before. So I don't know what we should do about that.
Which, you're talking about the $597.99?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
Okay.
I can't answer that.
2 lines down from that, MailChimp, the budget for it is $225. It will be a minimum of $360.
Okay. Didn't you give me these numbers?
Yeah, I did. I don't know what happened. Further down,
if we're talking hundreds of dollars, I just want to say, I think we should be talking about substantive amounts.
okay. I was wondering if I should do nitpicking.
The answer would be no.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mean to be.
That's fine,
I think, we're taught, like I said at the beginning, you're not gonna get a budget down to the cent.
Okay.
These are our best guesses. We could sit here all day
I
and treat
realize.
these numbers by $10, $20, $100 amounts, and it doesn't make a significant difference to your bottom line.
Yeah.
If you have something significant, $30,000,
Yeah.
adding $35,000 from minister's salary or $7,000 of moving expenses is significant.
Okay. Well, and I realize that a budget is a work of fiction, so, yeah. I don't know what registration and conference fees are, but we spent $3,000 on it.
Yeah, presbytery doesn't exist anymore. So, and what is your question?
I never put in, nobody went to a conference.
Okay, so again, that may be a clerical error on their part. I wish you could come to these meetings and answer some of these questions, but.
Don't let me lose. Okay. So that was the primary things. The other ones are just nitpicky. So.
But have you recorded those questions? Because we can ask. Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just saying for follow-up, I think it would be okay to ask, what, not in terms of, I don't think it doesn't need to hinder the meeting here, but I'm just saying as for follow-up. Yeah, except presbytery doesn't exist anymore. Right? Right.
Pacific Mountain Conference.
Yeah, it's Pacific Mountain Conference. Yeah. 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 So are there other questions? Before I call for the motion, I just want to thank you for the discussion. I don't mean to sound short-tempered or impatient. This is a good discussion, and the issues you raised, Penny, I think you know it's Pat. I don't think we've ever been introduced. These are all really good questions, and you make valid points. I think the reality, of course, is when you call a minister, part of the call is the whole package deal, right? So the salaries included, the book allowance, all those numbers are spelled out in the call, in the invitation to come. So no minister comes here without knowing what they're getting, financially speaking. That it's just part of the process. It's never a surprise when someone gets here to figure, oh, I'm getting this or I'm not getting this financially. They know before they come that they're getting in all cases. All right. So my new number at the bottom with all those amendments is 22,602.94 with a surplus. Can I have a motion to accept the budget as amended? David Dean, seconded by Penny Grandma. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Just before we, thank you very much for that. Just before we go away, I just want to say that I did mention earlier that we are, of course, hoping to call a new minister, and that does mean that we need to keep our revenues coming in as they have been. And just like to remind that there are 3 ways people can donate. That is through PAR, through e-transfer, and of course, check our cash. Margaret can help people with most of those options in terms of if people don't need to know how to do that, any of those things. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A job that anybody aspires to, but you do such a wonderful job. Thank you very much. Yes, could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please? We're going to go with John Greenhow and seconded by Tom Cockrell. You are all